The smell of fresh bread and expensive wine filled the air at the Golden Rose, one of the most fancy restaurants in the city. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting warm light over tables covered with white cloth and sparkling silverware. This wasn't the kind of place where ordinary people came to eat. A simple salad here cost more than most people spent on groceries in a week. Maya wiped her hands on her black apron and looked around the dining room. She had been working here for almost 4 months now, ever since her mom got sick and the hospital. Bills started piling up. The job wasn't easy. The customers were demanding, the hours were long, and her feet hurt every single day. But it paid better than any other job she could find without a college degree. She glanced at the beautiful grand piano sitting in the corner of the restaurant. It was black and shiny, probably worth more than she would make in 5 years. The restaurant owner had put it there to make the place look more elegant, but nobody ever played it. Maya had asked once if anyone used it, and the manager just laughed and said it was for decoration. That piano called to her every single day. Sometimes when she was wiping down tables after closing, she would walk over and just look at it. She would trace her fingers along the smooth wood, remembering the hours she used to spend practicing when she was younger. Her fingers would itch to touch the keys, but she never dared. This wasn't her world, and she knew it. Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her mom. "Feeling better today. Don't worry about me." But Maya could read between the lines. Her mom was trying to be strong, but the cancer treatments were getting harder. The doctor said there was hope, but hope was expensive. Every pill, every treatment, every doctor visit cost money they didn't have. She had been accepted to the music school 3 years ago. Full scholarship based on her talent, they said. She had been so excited, so ready to start her real life. But then her dad left, and her mom got sick, and suddenly Maya's dreams felt selfish. How could she think about music when her mom needed her? "Maya, table 7 needs more water," called out James, the head waiter. He was nice enough, but he always looked stressed. Working at the Golden Rose meant everything had to be perfect all the time. Maya picked up the water pitcher and walked over to table 7. The couple there was probably in their 60s, dressed in clothes that cost more than Maya's monthly rent. They barely looked at her as she filled their glasses. She had gotten used to being invisible to most of the customers. To them, she was just part of the background, like the fancy wallpaper or the expensive paintings. As she worked, Maya couldn't help but overhear conversations at different tables. People talked about their vacation homes, their new cars, their business deals. They complained about problems that seemed so small compared to what she was dealing with. One woman was upset because her personal trainer was busy. Another man was annoyed because his favorite golf course was closed for maintenance. Maya tried not to feel bitter about it. These people had worked hard for their money, she told herself. They deserved to enjoy it. But sometimes it was hard to watch them waste food that could feed her family for a week, or leave tips that were smaller than what they spent on a single glass of wine. The kitchen door swung open, and Chef Rodriguez poked his head out. "Maya, can you take the special to table 12? And make sure you explain all the ingredients. The lady has allergies." Maya nodded and picked up the plate. Table 12 was right next to the piano. As she walked over, she noticed a little girl, maybe 8 years old, staring at the piano with wide eyes. The girl was with her parents, who were busy looking at their phones and didn't notice their daughter's fascination. "Excuse me," Maya said softly to the little girl as she served the food to her parents. "Do you like music?" The girl nodded enthusiastically. "I'd take piano lessons, but I've never seen one so big and pretty." Maya smiled. "It is beautiful, isn't it? Maybe someday you'll play on a piano just like this one." The girl's eyes lit up. "Really? Do you think so?" "I know so," Maya said, and she meant it. This little girl had something Maya had lost, the belief that dreams could come true. As Maya walked back to the kitchen, she thought about her own piano lessons. She had started when she was 6 years old. Her mom had saved up for months to buy her a small keyboard. It wasn't much, but it was enough for Maya to discover that music was her language. She could express things through music that she couldn't say with words. Her teacher, Mrs. Chun, had been amazed at how quickly Maya learned. "You have a gift," she used to say. "Don't waste it." Maya had practiced every day, sometimes for hours. She learned classical pieces, jazz standards, even popular songs. Music filled her life with joy and purpose. Now, as she refilled salt shakers and folded napkins, Maya wondered if Mrs. Chun would be disappointed in her. Would she understand why? Maya had given up music for a job serving food to people who had everything? Or would she think Maya had wasted her gift? The evening rush was about to begin. Maya could see expensive cars pulling up outside, letting out people dressed in designer clothes. Friday nights were always busy at the Golden Rose. Rich people like to show off their wealth, and this restaurant was the perfect place to do it. Maya checked her appearance in the mirror by the staff entrance. Her uniform was clean, her hair was pulled back neatly, and she had practiced her smile until it looked natural. She had learned that good service meant being friendly but not too friendly, present but not intrusive. It was a delicate balance. As she walked back into the dining room, Maya saw that someone had reserved the big table near the piano. The table was set for 12 people, with extra flowers and the restaurant's best china. This was clearly going to be an important dinner. Maya hoped she would be assigned to a different section. Important dinners usually meant demanding customers and high stress, but as she looked at the reservation book, her heart sank. The big table was in her section. The name on the reservation was Blackstone. She didn't recognize it, but from the way the manager was nervous and the way the staff was being extra careful with the setup, she knew this was someone important. Maya took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. She had learned to handle difficult customers before. She would smile, be professional, and do her job well. Maybe if she was lucky, they would be kind customers who treated her with respect. She walked over to check that everything was perfect at the table. The glasses were spotless, the silverware was aligned correctly, and the flowers were fresh. As she made final adjustments, she glanced at the piano one more time. For just a moment, she let herself imagine sitting at that bench, her fingers dancing across the keys, filling the room with beautiful music. But that was just a dream. Right now, she had work to do. The Golden Rose restaurant buzzed with energy as the evening crowd arrived. Maya watched through the large windows as a shiny black car pulled up to the front entrance. The driver quickly got out and opened the door for a tall man in expensive suit. Even from a distance, Maya could tell this person was used to getting attention. Richard Blackstone stepped into the restaurant like he owned the place. His gray hair was perfectly styled, and his watch probably cost more than Maya's yearly salary. Behind him came a group of well-dressed men and women, all laughing loudly and talking about their latest business deals. Maya had seen rich people before, but this group seemed different. They acted like the whole world should stop and pay attention to them. The restaurant manager, Mr. Peterson, rushed over to greet them personally. Maya had never seen him move so fast or smile so wide. "Mr. Blackstone, welcome back to the Golden Rose. Your usual table is ready." Good, good, Blackstone said, barely looking at the manager. "Make sure the service is perfect tonight. I'm celebrating a big deal, and I want everything to be exactly right." Maya felt her stomach tighten. She had been hoping for an easy night, but it looked like she was about to deal with very demanding customers. She watched as the group made their way to the big table in her section. They were loud and seemed to think their conversation was the most important thing happening in the restaurant. As they sat down, Maya noticed how they treated the other staff. When the hostess tried to help with their coats, one of the women just ignored her completely. When a busboy came to fill their water glasses, none of them even looked up from their phones. Maya had dealt with rude customers before, but this group seemed to take it to a whole new level. She took a deep breath and walked over to their table with menus. "Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Golden Rose. I'm Maya, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Blackstone looked up from his phone for just a second. "Yeah, whatever. Bring us your most expensive wine. The whole table will have the same thing." Maya waited for him to ask what the other guests wanted, but he just went back to his phone. The other people at the table didn't seem to mind that he was ordering for everyone. They were too busy taking selfies and talking about their expensive cars and vacation homes. As the evening went on, Maya realized this was going to be one of the most challenging nights of her job. Every request came with attitude. They complained about the temperature in the restaurant, the music being too loud, then too quiet. One woman sent back her food 3 times, claiming it wasn't cooked right, even though Maya could see she had barely touched it. But the worst part was how they talked about the staff when they thought no one was listening. Maya heard them making jokes about the help and betting on how much education the servers had. They seemed to think that working in a restaurant meant someone wasn't smart or important. Maya kept her professional smile and did her job. She had learned to ignore rude comments and focus on providing good service. Her mom had always taught her that how other people treated you said more about them than about you. But tonight, their words stung more than usual. Maybe it was because she was tired, or maybe it was because she kept thinking about the dreams. She had given up. The group ordered round after round of expensive drinks. As they got more drunk, they got louder and more obnoxious. Other customers in the restaurant started looking uncomfortable. Maya saw an elderly couple at a nearby table ask to be moved to a quieter section around 9 o'clock. After they had finished their main course, Blackstone stood up and raised his glass. "Listen up, everyone," he said loudly enough for the whole restaurant to hear. "Tonight we celebrate the biggest deal of my career. I just bought 3 more companies, which means I'm now worth more money than most people can even count." His friends cheered and clapped. Maya rolled her eyes and continued clearing their empty plates. She had heard similar speeches from wealthy customers before. They always seemed to think everyone else was interested in how much money they had. But then Blackstone's eyes wandered around the restaurant, and they landed on the piano in the corner. A strange smile crossed his face, the kind of smile that made Maya feel uncomfortable. "You know what this place needs?" he said, pointing at the piano. "Some entertainment. I bet that fancy piano has never even been played." He looked around the restaurant with a smirk. "I bet none of the people who work here could even play a simple song." Maya felt her cheeks get warm. She knew he was talking about the staff, about people like her. His friends started laughing and agreeing with him. One of them said something about how the help probably didn't know the difference between a piano and a table. "Hey, you!" Blackstone called out, and Maya realized he was looking directly at her. "Server girl, come here for a minute." Maya's heart started beating faster. She had been hoping to stay invisible for the rest of the night, but now all eyes in the restaurant were on her. She walked over to the table slowly, trying to keep her expression neutral. "Yes, sir? Is there something you need?" she asked politely. Blackstone's friends were all grinning now, like they were about to watch something entertaining. "I've got a bet for you," he said, pulling out his wallet. "I've got $100 here that says you can't play a single song on that piano over there." Maya felt her face get hot. $100 was a lot of money for her, more than she usually made in tips on a good night. But she knew this wasn't really about the money. This was about humiliating her in front of everyone. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't think I'm allowed to play the piano." "It's just for decoration," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Oh, come on," one of his friends chimed in. "It's just a bit of fun. You probably can't play anyway, right? I mean, how would you know how?" The whole table burst out laughing. Maya looked around the restaurant and saw that everyone was watching now. Some people looked uncomfortable, but others seemed curious about what would happen next. She felt trapped between the table and the piano, with nowhere to run. "Tell you what," Blackstone said, standing up and walking closer to her. "I'll make it even easier for you. Just play Happy Birthday or something simple like that. If you can do it, you get the $100. If you can't, well, we'll all have a good laugh." Maya's hands were shaking now. She looked at the piano, then back at Blackstone's smug face. Part of her wanted to walk away, to maintain her dignity and ignore his cruel game. But another part of her, the part that remembered hours of practice and the joy of making music, was stirring to life. The restaurant was completely quiet now. Even the kitchen staff had stopped what they were doing to watch. Maya could feel everyone's eyes on her, waiting to see what she would do. She thought about her mom at home, struggling with medical bills. She thought about her dreams of music school, locked away in her heart. She thought about Mrs. Chun saying, "Don't waste your gift." Maya looked at Blackstone one more time. His expression was full of arrogance and cruelty. He was so sure that he had found someone to humiliate for his entertainment. He had no idea what he was about to discover. "Okay," Maya said quietly. "I'll do it." Maya walked slowly toward the piano, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Every step felt like it took forever. The entire restaurant had gone completely silent. Even the kitchen staff had stopped cooking to watch what was happening. She could feel dozens of eyes following her every movement. As she got closer to the piano, memories started flooding back. She remembered being 7 years old, sitting on a tiny stool next to her first piano teacher, Mrs. Chun. She remembered the excitement of learning her first song, the way her mom's face lit up when she played it perfectly. She remembered staying up late practicing, losing track of time because the music felt so natural, so right, but she also remembered the day she had to quit lessons. Her mom had been diagnosed with cancer, and suddenly there was no money for music anymore. Maya had cried for hours that night, not just because she couldn't take lessons, but because she felt like she was losing a part of herself. Now, 3 years later, she was about to touch piano keys again, but not in the way she had always dreamed. Not at a concert hall or a music school. Instead, she was about to play for a group of drunk, rich people who saw her as nothing more than entertainment. Maya reached the piano and stood there for a moment, just looking at it. The black surface was so shiny she could see her reflection in it. Her hands were still shaking, but now it wasn't just from nervousness. It was from excitement, too. Despite everything, despite the cruel situation, she was going to play music. Again, she sat down on the bench and adjusted the height slightly. The piano was perfectly tuned. She could tell just from touching one key softly. This was a real instrument, not just decoration. Someone had taken care of it, kept it ready for music. Behind her, she heard Blackstone talking to his friends. "This should be funny," he said with a laugh. "She's probably never even seen a piano up close before." Maya closed her eyes and took a deep breath. For just a moment, she let herself forget about the restaurant, about the cruel people watching her, about everything except the music. She placed her fingers on the keys and began to play. The first notes were soft and gentle. She started with a simple melody, something that sounded like what Blackstone expected. But as her fingers remembered how to move across the keys, something magical began to happen. The music started to grow, to become more complex and beautiful. Maya had chosen to play Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. It was one of her favorite pieces, one she had practiced hundreds of times when she was younger. As she played, she felt like she was coming home after a long journey. Every note was exactly where it should be. Every melody flowed perfectly into the next. The restaurant stayed completely silent, but now it was a different kind of silence. Before, people had been waiting for her to fail, to prove that she was just a poor server who didn't belong in their fancy world. Now they were listening to something they had never expected to hear. Maya's playing was not just technically perfect. It was full of emotion, full of life. She poured all of her pain into the music, all of her dreams and disappointments. She played about missing her mom while she was at work, about giving up music school, about feeling invisible every day. But she also played about hope, about the beauty she still saw in the world, about the love she felt for her family. As the piece continued, Maya felt herself getting stronger. Her fingers moved with confidence across the keys, finding complicated passages that most people couldn't even imagine playing. She added her own touches to the piece, small changes that made it uniquely hers. The people in the restaurant were completely mesmerized. The elderly couple who had asked to be moved away from Blackstone's table was now leaning forward, trying to hear every note. The little girl who had admired the piano earlier was standing up in her chair, her mouth open in amazement. Even the kitchen staff had come out to listen. The chef, who usually never left his station during dinner service, was standing in the doorway with tears in his eyes. The other servers had stopped what they were doing and were gathered around, watching Maya with pride and amazement, but the most shocking reaction was from Blackstone's table. The cruel laughter had stopped completely. One by one, his friends had fallen silent, their faces showing confusion and then wonder. They had expected to see someone embarrass themselves, but instead they were witnessing something extraordinary. Maya transitioned seamlessly from the nocturne into another piece. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2. This was much more difficult, requiring incredible skill and years of training. But Maya played it like she had been performing it her whole life. Her fingers danced across the keys, creating music so beautiful that it seemed to transform the entire restaurant. People who had been eating dinner forgot about their food. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Even the people walking by on the street outside began to slow down, trying to figure out where the incredible music was coming from. Maya was lost in the music now. She had forgotten about the bet, about the $100, about Blackstone's cruel challenge. She was playing for herself, for her mom, for her dreams that had been sleeping but never died. Every note was a declaration that she was more than just a server, more than just someone people could ignore. As she played, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in years. She felt powerful. She felt valuable. She felt like the person she was meant to be, not the person circumstances had forced her to become. The music built to a crescendo, Maya's hands moving so fast they were almost a blur, but every note was perfect, every chord exactly right. She played with the skill of someone who had been trained at the best music schools, with the passion of someone who had lived through real hardship. In the audience, people were openly crying. The little girl's parents were holding each other, amazed by what they were hearing. The elderly couple was holding hands, remembering their own young dreams. Even some of Blackstone's friends looked moved, though they seemed confused about how to react, but Maya didn't see any of this. She was completely absorbed in the music, in the joy of playing again after so long. This was what she had been born to do. This was her gift, her talent, her calling, and for these few minutes, no one could take it away from her. The piece began to wind down, the dramatic passages giving way to something softer and more reflective. Maya played the final notes with perfect control, letting each one ring out clearly before slowly lifting her hands from the keys. The silence that followed was different from any silence the restaurant had ever experienced. It was the silence of people who had just witnessed something they would never forget. It was the silence of people who had just realized they had completely misjudged someone. Maya sat at the piano bench for a moment, her hands still resting on the keys. She was breathing hard, not from the physical effort of playing, but from the emotional intensity of the experience. She had forgotten how good it felt to make music, how right it felt to express herself this way. Slowly, she turned around to face the restaurant. Every single person was staring at her, but their expressions were completely different now. There was no mockery, no condescension, no cruel amusement. Instead, there was awe, respect, and something that looked like shame on the faces of some of Blackstone's friends. Maya stood up from the piano bench and smoothed down her server's uniform. She looked directly at Blackstone, who was sitting frozen in his chair, his mouth slightly open in shock. For the first time all evening, he had nothing to say. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Maya stood next to the piano, her hands still trembling slightly from the intensity of her performance. She looked around the restaurant, taking in the faces of everyone who had just witnessed something they would never forget. The whole world seemed to have stopped moving. Then suddenly the spell was broken. One person started clapping, then another, and then the entire restaurant exploded into applause. But this wasn't polite restaurant clapping. This was the kind of applause you hear at concert halls, thunderous and genuine and filled with emotion. People were standing up from their tables, some wiping tears from their eyes. The little girl who had been fascinated by the piano was jumping up and down, clapping her hands together with pure joy. Her parents were beaming, and her father was recording the applause with his phone, as if he wanted to capture this magical moment forever. The kitchen staff had come out completely now, still wearing their aprons and chef hats. They were clapping. The loudest of all, because they knew Maya as their coworker, their friend. They had seen her working long hours, always professional, always kind. But they had no idea she had this incredible gift hidden inside her. Maya felt overwhelmed by the response. She had played music for people before, but never like this. Never in a situation where she had started as someone invisible and ended as someone everyone wanted to see. The applause washed over her like a warm wave, healing parts of her heart that had been hurt for so long. But even in this moment of triumph, her eyes kept going back to Blackstone's table. His friends were clapping too, but they looked confused and embarrassed. They had come here expecting to humiliate someone, and instead they had been shown something beautiful and pure. Some of them wouldn't even look at Maya directly, as if they were ashamed of what they had tried to do. Blackstone himself was still sitting in his chair, not clapping. He looked like he was in shock, like he couldn't believe what had just happened. His face had gone pale, and his usual confident smirk was completely gone. For the first time in probably years, he looked uncertain about himself. As the applause finally began to die down, Maya noticed an elegant older woman walking toward her. She was probably in her 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes. She moved with the grace of someone who had spent her life around music and art. Maya could tell immediately that this woman was different from the other wealthy customers. "My dear," the woman said, reaching out to take Maya's hands. "That was absolutely extraordinary. I'm Elena Vasquez, and I'm the director of the Manhattan Music Academy. I've been listening to young musicians for over 30 years, and I have never, ever heard anything like what you just played." Maya felt her heart skip a beat. The Manhattan Music Academy was one of the most famous music schools in the country. Only the most talented students in the world got accepted there. "Thank you," managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "Where did you study?" Elena asked, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Juilliard? Curtis? I must know who your teachers were." Maya looked down at her server's uniform, suddenly feeling embarrassed. "I didn't go to any fancy school," she said quietly. "I just took lessons when I was younger until—" She trailed off, not wanting to explain her family's financial struggles to this sophisticated woman, but Elena's expression didn't change. If anything, she looked more impressed. "You mean to tell me you're self-taught? That makes what you just did even more remarkable." She paused, studying Maya's face. "Tell me, what happened? Why aren't you performing professionally?" Maya felt tears starting to form in her eyes. "My mom got sick," she said simply. "I had to quit music to work and help pay for her treatments. I was supposed to go to music school, but—" She shrugged, unable to finish the sentence. Elena's face softened with understanding. "Oh, my dear child, life can be so unfair sometimes, can't it? But talent like yours doesn't just disappear. It waits quietly until the right moment comes along." Other people were starting to approach now. Maya saw a well-dressed man in his 40s walking over, and behind him, a woman with short red hair who looked like she might work in the entertainment industry. Word was spreading through the restaurant that something special had just happened. The man introduced himself as David Kim, a talent agent who represented classical musicians. "I couldn't help but overhear," he said with a warm smile. "I've been working with performers for 15 years, and I've never heard anything like what you just played. Do you have any recordings, any professional experience?" Maya shook her head, feeling overwhelmed by all the attention. "I'm just a server," she said. "I work here to pay bills. I haven't played in public in years." The red-haired woman stepped forward. "I'm Lisa Chun, and I run a recording studio downtown. What you just did was magical? People would pay good money to hear you play like that?" Maya looked around at all these successful people who were suddenly interested in her life. It felt surreal, like she was dreaming. Just 20 minutes ago, she had been invisible, just another server bringing food to tables. Now, suddenly, everyone wanted to talk to her, but the most surprising moment was yet to come. Maya saw Blackstone slowly getting up from his chair. He looked different now. Smaller somehow. The arrogance was gone from his face, replaced by something that looked like genuine regret. He walked over to where Maya was standing, surrounded by all these new people who believed in her talent. His friends were watching him, probably wondering what he was going to do. The whole restaurant was watching too, curious about how this story would end. "Miss," Blackstone said, his voice much quieter than it had been all evening. "I owe you an apology, a big one." Maya looked at him, not sure what to say. Part of her was still angry about the way he had treated her, the way he had tried to humiliate her. But another part of her felt sorry for him, because she could see that he was genuinely shaken by what had happened. "I came here tonight thinking I was better than everyone else," he continued. "I thought I could have some fun at your expense. Make a joke out of someone I saw as beneath me. But you just showed me something I've never seen before. You showed me what real talent looks like, what real class looks like." He reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. But instead of taking out $100, he pulled out his checkbook. "The bet was for $100, he said, writing quickly. "But what you just gave us was worth so much more than that." He tore off the check and handed it to Maya. Her eyes widened when she saw the amount. It wasn't $100. It was $10,000. "This is too much," Maya said, trying to hand the check back. "I can't accept this." "Please," Blackstone said, and for the first time all evening he sounded humble. "Let me do this. Let me do something right tonight. You have a gift that the world needs to hear. Don't let money be the thing that stops you from sharing it." Maya looked at the check, then at Elena, then at all the people who had gathered around her. She thought about her mom at home, struggling with medical bills. She thought about her dreams of music school, dreams that had seemed impossible just an hour ago. "There's something else," Elena said, stepping forward. "I would like to offer you a full scholarship to the Manhattan Music Academy. We have a program for exceptional students, and you, my dear, are definitely exceptional." Maya felt like the ground was spinning beneath her feet. Everything was happening so fast, so unexpectedly. She was still wearing her server's uniform, still had tables to clean, still had a job to finish. But suddenly her whole future was changing right in front of her eyes. Maya stood there holding the check, still unable to believe what was happening to her. The number seemed impossible, $10,000. That was more money than she had ever seen at one time. It was enough to cover her mom's treatments for months, maybe even get her the surgery the doctors had been recommending. Elena placed a gentle hand on Maya's shoulder. "I know this is a lot to take in," she said with a warm smile. "But I want you to know that my offer is completely serious. We've been looking for someone with your natural talent for years. Students like you don't come along very often." Maya looked around at all the faces watching her. The whole restaurant was still buzzing with excitement about what they had just witnessed. People were taking pictures, probably to share on social media. She could imagine the posts. "You won't believe what happened at dinner tonight." But Maya wasn't thinking about fame or attention. She was thinking about her mom, sitting at home watching television, probably worried about the medical bills piling up on the kitchen table. She was thinking about all the nights she had fallen asleep, listening to classical music on her phone, dreaming about the life she thought she would never have. "I need to call my mom," Maya said suddenly. "She won't believe this. She's the one who first signed me up for piano lessons when I was little. She worked extra hours just to pay for them." Elena nodded understandingly. "Family is the most important thing. Would you like to use my phone? Or we could all go visit her together, if you'd like." Before Maya could answer, she heard her name being called from across the restaurant. James, the head waiter, was walking over with a concerned look on his face. Maya suddenly remembered that she was still at work, still wearing her uniform, still supposed to be serving tables. "Maya, are you okay?" James asked. "I saw what happened, and it was incredible, but we still have customers who need service." Maya felt a moment of panic. Here she was, talking about scholarships and new opportunities, but she still had a job to do. She couldn't just abandon her responsibilities, no matter how exciting this moment was. but Blackstone stepped forward. "Actually, I'd like to speak with your manager," he said to James. "I want to make sure Maya is free for the rest of the evening. In fact, I'd like to cover the cost of hiring extra staff for tonight so she doesn't have to worry about work." Within minutes, Mr. Peterson, the restaurant manager, was at their table. Maya had never seen him look so excited and nervous at the same time. Having both Blackstone and Elena Vasquez in his restaurant on the same night was probably the biggest thing that had ever happened at the Golden Rose. "Mr. Blackstone, Ms. Vasquez," he said, slightly out of breath, "is there anything I can do for you? I hope everything has been satisfactory." "More than satisfactory," Elena said with a smile. "Your employee Maya here has just given us one of the most beautiful musical performances I've ever heard. You should be very proud to have someone so talented working here." Mr. Peterson looked confused. He knew Maya was a good worker, but he had no idea she could play piano. "Maya played music?" he asked, looking back and forth between them. "She didn't just play music," David Kim, the talent agent, chimed in. "She gave a performance that would be at home in Carnegie Hall. You have a genuine prodigy working as your server." Over the next hour, Maya's life continued to change in ways she never could have imagined. David gave her his business card and promised to help her find performance opportunities. Lisa from the recording studio wanted to set up a session where Maya could record some of her playing. Elena explained more about the scholarship program and what studying at the Manhattan Music Academy would mean for her career. But the most touching moment came when Blackstone pulled Maya aside for a private conversation. They walked to a quiet corner of the restaurant, away from all the excitement and attention. "I want you to know," he said, looking directly into her eyes, "that what happened tonight changed me. I've spent so many years thinking that money was the most important thing, that having wealth made me better than other people. But you showed me something tonight that all my money could never buy." Maya wasn't sure what to say. She had never seen a rich person look so humble, so genuinely sorry for their behavior. "I grew up poor," Blackstone continued. "I know that's hard to believe now, but it's true. My family struggled just like yours is struggling. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what that felt like. I forgot that every person has value, regardless of their job or their bank account." He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. "I want to do more than just give you money for tonight. I want to set up a scholarship fund in your name for other young musicians who can't afford to pursue their dreams. Would you let me do that?" Maya felt tears forming in her eyes again. The idea that her experience tonight could help other people like her seemed almost too good to be true. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious," Blackstone replied. "I've made a lot of money in my life, but I've never spent it on anything that really mattered. This would matter." As the evening wound down, Maya finally found a quiet moment to call her mom. She stepped outside the restaurant into the cool night air and dialed the familiar number. "Maya?" Her mom's voice came through the phone, sounding tired but alert. "How was work tonight? You sound different." Maya didn't know where to begin. How do you tell someone that your entire life just changed in the span of 2 hours? "Mom," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, "something incredible happened tonight, something that's going to change everything for us." She told her mom the whole story, from Blackstone's cruel challenge to the standing ovation to the scholarship offer. She could hear her mom crying on the other end of the phone, but she knew they were happy tears. "Oh, sweetheart," her mom said through her tears, "I always knew this day would come. I always knew your talent was too big to stay hidden forever. Mrs. Chun would be so proud." 6 months later, Maya stood backstage at Carnegie Hall, wearing a beautiful black dress instead of a server's uniform. Through the curtain, she could see the audience filling the famous concert hall. Tonight was her debut performance, the result of months of intensive training at the Manhattan Music Academy. In the front row, she could see her mom, healthy again thanks to the medical care that Blackstone's generosity had made possible. Next to her sat Elena, beaming with pride like a grandmother watching her grandchild graduate. A few rows back, she spotted David Kim and Lisa Chun. who had both become important parts of her new musical career, and in the back, trying to be inconspicuous, sat Blackstone. He had kept his promise about the scholarship fund, which had already helped a dozen young musicians pursue their dreams. He came to all of Maya's performances now, never asking for special treatment or recognition, just quietly supporting the talent he had almost destroyed. As Maya walked onto the stage and sat down at the grand piano, she thought about that night. At the Golden Rose, she thought about how close she had come to walking away, to staying invisible forever. She thought about how one moment of courage had opened up a whole new world. The audience fell silent as Maya placed her hands on the keys. She was about to play the same Chopin piece that had changed her life 6 months ago. But this time, she wasn't playing for people who saw her as entertainment. She was playing for people who saw her as an artist, as someone with something valuable to share with the world. As the first notes filled Carnegie Hall, Maya smiled. Sometimes the most beautiful music comes from the most unexpected places. And sometimes the people who try to bring you down end up lifting you higher than you ever dreamed possible.